The air smelled like fresh flowers and expensive perfume. The giant white tents shimmered under the Lego sun, and soft music floated across the garden. Ifeoma's wedding was the kind people talked about for years. Everything looked perfect. The chairs were draped in white and gold. The tables sparkled with crystal glasses, and the guests were dressed in their finest. Felt like a fairy tale. At the center of it all stood Ifeoma, the bride. Her gown was a sea of white lace, flowing all the way to the ground, and her smile was as bright as the sunshine. She was nervous, though. She had planned every little detail of the wedding for months, and she wanted everything to go smoothly. Just breathe, she whispered to herself, gripping her bouquet tightly. Beside her was Chaik, her soon-to-be husband. He looked every bit the perfect groom in his black tuxedo, standing tall and confident. But deep down, Chaik wasn't as calm as he appeared. His eyes kept darting around the crowd, scanning the faces of the guests. He knew his older brother, Kunal, was there somewhere. Chaik hadn't wanted Kunal at the wedding, but their father had insisted. Family is family, Chief Okonkwo had said. Chaik wasn't so sure. Kunal hadn't said a word to him in years, not since their fight over the family business. Chaik had taken over after their father retired, and Kunal had felt cheated. Things had gotten so bad that Kunal had left Lagos altogether, only returning for their father's sake. Seeing him today, Chaik couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As Chaik scanned the crowd, his eyes landed on Simba, his German shepherd, sitting near the back of the garden. Simba was tied to a post, his leash wrapped securely around it. The dog had been a part of Chaik's life for years, a gift from his late mother. Simba was calm and obedient, a quiet presence that always made Chaik feel safe. But now, Simba was restless, pacing back and forth and letting out low barks. Why's he acting like that? Chaik muttered to himself. Acting like what? Ifeoma asked, glancing up at him. It's Simba. He's barking. He doesn't usually bark at nothing, Chaik said, frowning. Ifeoma followed his gaze and shrugged. Maybe he's just nervous, like the rest of us. It's a big day for him too. She laughed softly, trying to ease the tension. Chaik forced a smile and nodded, but the unease didn't leave him. The ceremony began, and for a while, everything seemed fine. The pastor's voice was steady as he led Ifeoma and Chaik through their vows. The guests watched with smiles and teary eyes as the couple exchanged rings. Even Simba had quieted down. For a moment, it felt like nothing could go wrong. But then, as the pastor said, "You may now kiss the bride," Simba started barking again. This time, it was louder, sharper, and more insistent. Heads turned toward the dog, and a few guests began whispering. "Do something about that dog," Adaora, Ifeoma's mother, hissed from the front row. She looked furious, her perfectly made-up face twisted with annoyance. "It's ruining the moment," Chaik signaled to one of the ushers, who hurried over to Simba and tried to calm him down. The usher knelt down, patted Simba on the head, and whispered something. Simba stopped barking for a moment but started growling instead, his eyes fixed on the towering white cake at the center of the reception area. The cake was a masterpiece, 3 tiers of perfection, decorated with delicate sugar flowers and ribbons of gold. It was the pride of the event, displayed on a small stage surrounded by roses. Everyone had admired it when they arrived, snapping photos and talking about how stunning it looked. But now, Simba's growling made people uncomfortable. "What's his problem with the cake?" someone murmured. "Maybe he smells food," another guest joked, trying to lighten the mood. "Dogs can sense things humans can't," Mama Nkechi, Chaik's aunt, said with a knowing look. She was dressed in a bright green lace dress and a matching ghillie that seemed to reach for the sky. Mama Nkechi was the kind of person who believed in omens and signs. "That dog is trying to tell us something. We should listen," Adaora rolled her eyes. "Not now, Nkechi. This is a wedding, not one of your superstitious gatherings." Ifeoma glanced nervously at the cake. She didn't believe in all that talk about signs, but Simba's behavior was strange. "Do you think something's wrong?" she whispered to Chaik. "Nothing's wrong," Chaik said firmly. "Simba's just being weird. It's probably the crowd or the music. He'll settle down." But Simba didn't settle down. As the couple walked back up the aisle after the ceremony, with guests cheering and tossing flower petals, Simba broke free from his leash. He bolted straight toward the cake, barking like his life depended on it. Gasps filled the air as Simba leapt onto the stage, growling and circling the cake. The guests froze, unsure of what to do. The bakers, who had been standing nearby, rushed forward, shouting and trying to pull the dog away. But Simba wouldn't budge. He kept barking, his sharp teeth bared, his eyes fixed on the bottom tier of the cake. "Get that dog out of here," Edaora shouted, her voice rising above the commotion. "This is a disgrace." Chike hurried over to Simba, grabbing his leash and pulling him back. "Simba, stop," he commanded, his voice firm. Simba stopped barking but didn't stop growling. His body was tense, his tail stiff, and his ears pointed straight up. "What's gotten into him?" Chike muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Mama Nkechi stepped forward, her expression serious. "I'm telling you, Chike, that dog knows something. We need to be careful." Edaora threw up her hands. "Oh, please. It's a dog. It doesn't know anything. This is just ridiculous." She turned to the crowd and forced a smile. "Everyone, let's continue. Don't let this small distraction ruin the day." But it wasn't a small distraction anymore. People were whispering, some looking at the cake with suspicion. Ifioma felt her chest tighten. She had spent months planning this wedding, and now everything was falling apart. "Chike, maybe we should check the cake," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "What? Why?" Chike asked, frowning. "Just to be sure. It's probably nothing, but Simba." She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Chike hesitated. He didn't want to make a scene, but he couldn't ignore the look in Ifioma's eyes. Before he could decide, Tola, his cousin, spoke up. "She's right. We should check it. Simba isn't like this. He's a trained dog. If he's acting this way, there's a reason." Edaora groaned. "Oh, so now the dog is a prophet? This is madness. Ifioma, are you really going to let your day be ruined by a barking dog?" "I just want to be sure," Ifioma said softly. The guests watched as tension hung in the air. Chike looked at Simba, then at Ifioma, and finally nodded. "Fine," he said. "Let's check the cake." The garden was silent, except for Simba's low growl. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure of what to do or say. Ifioma's heart pounded in her chest as she stared at the towering wedding cake. Her fingers gripped Chike's arm tightly, and her mind raced with possibilities. Why was Simba acting like this? He had never behaved like this before. Chike sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Tola, are you sure about this? It's just a dog. Maybe he's just worked up because of the crowd." Tola crossed her arms and frowned. "Chike, I know Simba. We all do. He's not the kind of dog to act out for no reason. He's trying to tell us something. You can't just ignore it." Edaora stepped forward, her voice sharp. "This is nonsense. Dogs bark all the time. Are we going to stop an entire wedding because of an animal?" She turned to Ifioma, her voice softening. "Ifioma, my dear, don't let this ruin your day. People are watching. Let's move on." Ifioma bit her lip, torn between her mother's words and the unease in her chest. She looked at Chike, searching his face for an answer. "I don't know, Chike. I just feel like we should listen to Tola. What if something is wrong?" Edaora groaned loudly, throwing up her hands. "What could possibly be wrong with a cake? Ifioma, do you think the baker put poison in it? Or maybe it's cursed? Honestly, this is embarrassing." Mama Nkechi, who had been quietly watching from her seat, stood up suddenly, her green gelly catching the sunlight. "Edaora, you can laugh all you want, but I've lived long enough to know that dogs see what humans cannot. This is not just barking. This is a sign." Edaora let out a loud laugh, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, here we go. Mama Nkechi and her signs. Maybe we should call a priest to bless the cake while we're at it." "Nkechi has a point," an older man muttered from the back. Heads turned to see Papa Arins, a respected elder, stroking his gray beard thoughtfully. In my village, we don't ignore warnings like this. If a dog is behaving strangely, it means there's something we need to pay attention to. Edaora glared at him. This isn't your village, Arins. This is Lagos. We don't let dogs decide how we run things here. Enough! Chaik's voice cut through the rising tension. He looked at Ifeoma, his expression softening. Ife, if it'll make you feel better, let's check the cake. It's your day, and I don't want you to have any regrets. Edaora threw her hands up again. Unbelievable. Fine, go ahead and check the cake. Waste everyone's time. But when you see there's nothing wrong, don't say I didn't warn you. Guests murmured as the baker was called over. She was a petite woman named Neka, dressed in a white apron stained with flour and sugar. Her hands trembled as she approached the cake, her eyes darting between Simba and the towering tears. Is something wrong? Neka asked, her voice shaky. I don't understand what's happening. Simba barked again, lunging forward despite Chaik holding his leash tightly. His growls grew louder, his teeth bared. Simba, calm down, Chaik said, pulling the dog back. Ifeoma stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. Neka, Simba keeps barking at the cake. We just want to make sure everything is okay. Can you take a look? Maybe there's something wrong. Wrong? Neka repeated, her voice rising. No, there's nothing wrong. I baked this cake myself. Every layer is perfect. I even tasted it this morning before bringing it here. Tola stepped in, her tone serious. Nobody is accusing you of anything. Neka, we just want to check. That's all. Neka hesitated, glancing nervously at the guests. All right, she said, her hands fumbling as she reached for a knife. I'll cut a small piece. You'll see. There's nothing to worry about. As Neka sliced into the bottom tier, Mama Nkechi's voice rang out. Wait, don't touch it yet. Everyone froze. Ifeoma turned to Nkechi, confused. Why not? Let the dog sniff it first, Nkechi said, her expression grave. Let's see how he reacts. Edaora rolled her eyes so hard it seemed they might get stuck. This is ridiculous. Are we hosting a dog's birthday party now? Ignoring her, Nkechi waved Chaik over. Bring Simba closer. Chaik hesitated but eventually led Simba to the table. The dog sniffed the slice of cake, his nose twitching rapidly. His growls grew louder, his body tense as if ready to pounce. It's the cake, Tola whispered, her face pale. He's reacting to the cake. Neka's hands flew to her mouth. No, that's impossible. I baked this cake myself. I swear there's nothing wrong with it. You said that already, Nkechi said sharply. But the dog says otherwise. Edaora stepped forward, her voice loud and angry. All right, enough of this nonsense. If you want to ruin the wedding over a barking dog, then go ahead. But don't expect me to stand here and watch this madness. Calm down, Edaora, Papa Arins said. Nobody is trying to ruin the wedding. We just need to be sure. Sure of what? Edaora snapped. That a dog is smarter than all of us? The tension was thick as Chaik's friend, Emeka, stepped forward. He was a doctor, always carrying a small emergency kit. If everyone is okay with it, Emeka said carefully, I can test a small piece of the cake, just to be safe. Test it. Neka's voice wavered. Test it for what? Anything unusual, Emeka said. Sometimes these things happen. It's better to be cautious. Neka looked like she might faint. But I didn't do anything wrong. I swear. Nobody's blaming you, Ifeoma said softly. Please, Neka, just let him check. Reluctantly, Neka handed Emeka the slice. He opened his kit, pulling out a small vial and a strip of test paper. Everyone watched in silence as he performed the test, dipping the paper into the cake. The strip turned dark almost immediately. What does that mean? Ifeoma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emeka's face was grim. It means there's something in the cake. Something that shouldn't be there. Gasps filled the garden. Edaora stumbled back, her hand clutching her chest. No, that can't be. What's in it? Chaik asked, his voice steady but his eyes wide with shock. Cyanide, Emeka said quietly. There's cyanide in the frosting. The garden erupted in chaos. Guests jumped out of their seats, backing away from the cake. Aedaora screamed, her voice piercing the air. Who would do this? Who would poison a wedding cake? Neka fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand. I didn't put anything in the cake. I swear, I didn't. Chaik pulled Iphioma into his arms, holding her tightly. It's okay, he whispered, even though he didn't believe his own words. We'll figure this out. Mama Nkechi shook her head, her face dark with anger. This wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to ruin this wedding. Someone wanted to hurt you. But who? Iphioma asked, her voice shaking. Who would do this? As the guests murmured and whispered, Tola's eyes drifted to the corner of the garden. Kunnel was standing there, his arms crossed, his face calm. Too calm. Tola frowned, a strange feeling creeping over her. She didn't say anything, but in her heart, she knew. Something about Kunnel wasn't right. The garden was no longer quiet. It buzzed with panicked voices, whispers, and shouts. Guests stood in small groups, looking toward the towering cake as if it were some dangerous creature. The shocking discovery of cyanide in the frosting had turned Iphioma and Chaik's dream wedding into a nightmare. Simba stood at Chaik's side, his growl softer now but his body still tense. He kept his eyes on the cake, almost as if daring it to do something. Chaik tightened his grip on the dog's leash, his mind racing. How could this happen? Chaik muttered to himself, his voice barely audible. He turned to Emeka, who was still holding the test strip. You're sure about this? There's really cyanide in the cake. Emeka nodded grimly. I've run these tests 100 times. There's no mistake, Chaik. Someone put poison in that cake. If the words hadn't hit hard before, they did now. Chaik felt his chest tighten. He glanced at Iphioma, who was standing beside him, her face pale. She looked like she was struggling to breathe. Ife, Chaik reached for her hand. We'll figure this out. Promise. She shook her head, her voice trembling. Who would do this, Chaik? Who would want to hurt us on our wedding day? Before Chaik could answer, Aedaora's voice rang out, cutting through the tense air like a knife. This is sabotage. Someone wants to destroy my daughter's happiness. She marched toward Neka, pointing an accusing finger at the trembling baker. You're the one who made this cake. What did you do? Neka stumbled back, her hands raised as if to shield herself. I swear, I didn't do anything. I followed the recipe exactly. I don't know how this happened. You expect me to believe that? Aedaora snapped. You brought poison to my daughter's wedding and expect me to believe it was an accident? Do you think we're fools? Mama, stop, Iphioma said weakly, trying to steady her voice. This isn't helping. Aedaora ignored her and stepped closer to Neka. Tell the truth. Who paid you to do this? Was it jealousy or money? Speak. I didn't do it, Neka cried, her voice cracking. Tears streamed down her face as she fell to her knees. I don't know anything about poison. I just made the cake like I always do. Please, believe me. Mama Nkechi stepped forward, her expression dark. Aedaora, shouting at the girl won't solve anything. If she says she didn't do it, then we need to look elsewhere. Aedaora whirled on her, her eyes blazing. Elsewhere? Where else should we look? Nkechi, are you suggesting this cake just poisoned itself? Nkechi folded her arms. I'm suggesting that maybe someone else tampered with it. The baker brought the cake here, yes, but who was watching it afterward? Anyone could have done this. Guests' whispers grew louder. Some nodded in agreement with Nkechi, while others murmured suspicions about Neka. Tola, standing quietly near the back of the crowd, kept her eyes on Kunnel. He was leaning against a tree, his arms crossed, watching the commotion with a calm, almost bored expression. Too calm. Chaik, Tola said softly, pulling him aside. Have you noticed Kunnel? What about him? Chaik asked, following her gaze. Tola frowned. Look at him. Everyone else here is either panicking or arguing. But Kunnel, he hasn't said a word. He's just standing there, like this doesn't concern him at all. Chaik's brow furrowed as he studied his brother. Kunnal's face was unreadable, but there was something in his posture that unsettled Chaik. It was the way Kunnal seemed so detached, like he was watching a play instead of his own brother's wedding falling apart. Tola, don't start, Chaik said, shaking his head. I know Kunnal and I have our issues, but this is different. He wouldn't go this far. Are you sure? Tola asked, her voice low. He's still angry about the business. And you know how he feels about you. Chaik didn't respond. He didn't want to believe it, but doubt was starting to creep in. Meanwhile, Adaora was still interrogating Neka, her voice rising with each question. If it wasn't you, then who was it? Tell me. I don't know. Neka sobbed. I brought the cake straight here. Nobody touched it while I was watching. While you were watching? Nkechi repeated, her eyes narrowing. Does that mean there were times you weren't watching? Neka hesitated, her face crumpling. I stepped away for a few minutes to set up the other desserts. But I swear, it was only for a short while. I didn't see anyone near the cake. A few minutes is all it takes, Nkechi said, her tone grim. Who else had access to the cake during that time? The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. The guests exchanged uneasy glances, some murmuring about the waitstaff, others about the security team. Then Tola spoke up, her voice steady. What about Kunnal? All eyes turned toward Kunnal, who was still leaning against the tree. He didn't flinch under the sudden attention. Instead, he smiled faintly and pushed himself off the trunk. Me? Kunnal said, his tone light, almost amused. Why would I want to poison my own brother's wedding cake? Why wouldn't you? Tola shot back, her voice sharp. You've been angry with Chaik for years. You didn't even want to come to this wedding. Now you're just standing there, acting like none of this matters. The suspicious, Kunnal chuckled, shaking his head. Tola, you've always had a wild imagination. But this is a stretch even for you. Is it? Kechi said, stepping forward. You have motive, Kunnal. Everyone knows you're bitter about the family business. And you've been acting strange all day. Kunnal's smile faded, his eyes narrowing. You're accusing me of trying to kill my own brother? That's a serious accusation, Aunt Nkechi. Not kill, Nkechi said evenly. But sabotage? Humiliate him? I wouldn't put it past you. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Chaik finally stepped in, his voice firm. Enough. Kunnal, did you have anything to do with this? Kunnal met his brother's gaze, his expression unreadable. No, Chaik, I didn't. For a moment, Chaik wanted to believe him, but the nagging doubt in his chest wouldn't go away. If you didn't, then you won't mind if we ask some questions. Where were you when the cake was left unattended? Kunnal's jaw tightened. I was here mingling with the guests. Ask anyone. And did you see anyone near the cake? Tola pressed. Kunnal hesitated for the briefest moment before shaking his head. No, I didn't see anything. The guests' whispers grew louder, the tension climbing higher. Ifeoma clung to Chaik's arm, her voice trembling. Chaik, what if it was him? What if Tola's right? I don't know, Chaik said quietly. I just don't know. As the arguments continued and suspicions grew, Simba let out another bark, breaking the uneasy silence. The dog's sharp eyes darted between Kunnal and the cake, as if he could sense something no one else could. Chaik looked down at Simba, his mind racing. Could it really be Kunnal? Or was the truth hiding somewhere else? The crowd grew restless as the accusations swirled, and Chaik stood frozen in the center of it all. His heart pounded and his thoughts raced. Simba, still growling low, tugged against the leash as if urging Chaik to act. Kunnal's calm face remained a stark contrast to the chaos around him, and Tola's sharp accusations continued to echo in Chaik's ears. Kunnal, Chaik said firmly, his voice cutting through the murmurs. If you didn't do anything, then you have nothing to worry about. But we need answers. Kunnal smirked, brushing invisible dust off his sleeve. Answers? Fine. Ask all the questions you want, little brother. But accusing me without proof? That's low even for you. Tola wasn't backing down. You think this is a joke, Kunnal? Do you see the panic you've caused? There's poison in that cake. People could have died. If you're innocent, then explain why you've been acting so strange. Connell's smile faded, replaced by a scowl. Strange? I'm acting strange because I'm stuck here with people who are ready to point fingers at the first convenient target. You want to blame me because it's easy. But guess what, Tola? Not everything is about me. Chaik raised his hand to stop the argument. Enough. This isn't helping. He turned to Emeka, who still held his testing kit. Can you test the rest of the cake? Maybe it will give us more information. Emeka hesitated but nodded. I can test a few more sections. It won't take long. The guests held their breath as Emeka carefully cut another piece from the second tier of the cake. He dipped a fresh test strip into the frosting, his movements precise and deliberate. The seconds felt like hours as everyone watched, waiting for the results. The test strip darkened almost immediately. Emeka's face turned grim. There's cyanide in this tier too. Another wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. Some guests stepped back, murmuring in fear. Adaora clutched her chest, shaking her head. This can't be real. Who would do something so evil? Mama Nkechi, standing tall with her geli swaying slightly, spoke up. It's not a question of who anymore, Adaora. It's a question of why. Someone wanted this wedding ruined. Maybe even worse. Connell, arms crossed, rolled his eyes. Here we go again. I'm sure you're about to say it was me. Tola's voice was sharp. You're the only one here who has a reason to hate Chaik. Connell scoffed. Hate? Oh please. I don't hate him. I don't even think about him. What's the point? Chaik stepped forward, his voice steady but low. Connell, stop playing games. This isn't about the past anymore. This is about today. Right here, right now. If you know something, tell me. Connell's expression shifted, just for a moment. He looked almost hurt, but he quickly masked it with his usual indifference. I don't know anything, Chaik. Believe whatever you want. Before Chaik could press further, Emeka cleared his throat. We should check the whole cake. There could be other clues. Guests watched as Emeka worked, cutting small pieces from each tier and running his tests. The tension in the air was unbearable. Adaora paced back and forth, muttering to herself, while Mama Nkechi whispered prayers under her breath. Ifeoma clung to Chaik's arm, her nails digging into his skin. Emeka, what are you finding? Ifeoma asked softly, her voice trembling. Emeka hesitated before answering. It's the same. Cyanide in every tier. Whoever did this didn't just tamper with one part. They wanted the whole cake poisoned. Adaora let out a cry, tears streaming down her face. This was supposed to be a happy day. My daughter's wedding. How could someone be so cruel? Cruelty is easy when there's jealousy involved, Nkechi said pointedly, her eyes darting to Connell. Connell threw his hands up in frustration. Oh, come on. How many times do I have to say it? I didn't touch the cake. Then who did? Tola shot back. If not you, then who? As the arguing continued, one of the waitstaff stepped forward hesitantly. She was a young woman with a nervous expression, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her uniform. Excuse me, she said quietly, but no one heard her over the noise. She tried again, a little louder. Excuse me, please. Chaik noticed her and raised a hand to silence the crowd. What is it? The waitress swallowed hard, her eyes darting between Chaik and the cake. I think I saw someone near the cake earlier. The crowd hushed instantly. All eyes turned to her, and she looked like she wanted to disappear. Who? Chaik asked, his voice calm but firm. Who did you see? The waitress hesitated, wringing her hands. I don't know his name. He was wearing sunglasses and a hat. He looked like he didn't want anyone to notice him. What did he do? Tola pressed, stepping closer. He stood near the cake for a while, looking around like he was checking if anyone was watching. Then he walked away. I thought he was just admiring the cake, so I didn't think much of it. Did you see where he went? Chaik asked. The waitress shook her head. No. I got called to serve drinks, and when I came back, he was gone. Connell smirked, leaning against a nearby chair. See? A mystery man with sunglasses and a hat. Maybe you should all stop wasting time blaming me. Ketchy wasn't convinced. That doesn't clear you, Cunnel. You could have easily hired someone to do your dirty work. Cunnel's smirk disappeared, replaced by a glare. I'm not a saint, but I'm not a monster either. Stop acting like you know everything. Ketchy took a deep breath, trying to think clearly. We need more information. Someone here knows something. We just have to figure out who. Simba let out another sharp bark, pulling against his leash. He sniffed the air, his focus shifting to the crowd. It was as if the dog was trying to point them in the right direction. What is it, boy? Chike asked, kneeling to calm Simba. What are you trying to tell us? Simba barked again, his gaze fixed on the far end of the garden. Chike followed the dog's line of sight, but there was nothing unusual, just more guests standing around, whispering nervously. Maybe he's still reacting to the cake, Ifeoma suggested. Or maybe he senses something we don't, Tola added. Dogs are smarter than we think. Edaora groaned loudly. Enough with the dog. He's not a detective. We need real answers, not guesses. The scene continued to simmer with tension as the pieces slowly began falling into place. While Chike and Ifeoma tried to calm the guests, Tola's mind raced. The mention of the mystery man near the cake only deepened her suspicions. And though Cunnel continued to deny any involvement, Tola couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. The garden was thick with tension. Guests whispered, shook their heads, and eyed each other suspiciously. The air, once filled with laughter and joy, now carried fear and anger. The once beautiful wedding had turned into a nightmare, and every minute that passed without answers only made things worse. Simba barked again, breaking the uneasy silence. He was staring in the same direction as before, his ears alert, his leash pulling tight in Chike's hands. What is it, Simba? Chike muttered, kneeling beside the dog. Why do you keep barking over there? The dog growled low, his gaze fixed on a group of guests near the garden's edge. Chike followed Simba's line of sight but didn't see anything unusual. People stood in clusters, whispering nervously, but nothing stood out. Ife, Chike said, turning to his bride. What if Simba knows something we don't? Ifeoma, pale and visibly shaken, clutched his arm. But what is it, Chike? Is he pointing to someone? Is it the mystery man? Edaora, pacing nearby, let out a frustrated groan. Oh, for heaven's sake, it's a dog, Chike. A dog. This isn't some detective movie. Are we seriously going to rely on an animal to solve this? Mama, stop, Ifeoma said sharply, her voice breaking. Simba is the only reason we even found out about the cake. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have known it was poisoned. So please just stop. Edaora opened her mouth to argue but closed it when she saw the look on her daughter's face. For once, she stayed quiet. Tola, standing nearby with her arms crossed, spoke up. If Simba's barking at something, it's not random. Dogs don't act like this unless there's a reason. We need to figure out what he's sensing. Cunnel let out a loud sigh, drawing everyone's attention. Oh, here we go again. More talk about the dog. Why don't we just ask him to write a report while we're at it? Cunnel, Chike said, his voice low and dangerous. If you're innocent, you'd stop making jokes and start helping us figure this out. Cunnel's smirk faded, replaced by a glare. And what exactly do you want me to do, Chike? Sniff the cake myself? Or maybe interrogate the dog? Tola stepped forward, her voice sharp. How about telling us the truth for once? Cunnel, you've been dodging questions and acting shady all day. If you're not involved, prove it. Cunnel laughed bitterly. Prove it? How do you prove you didn't do something? This is ridiculous. You all want to blame me because it's easier than looking for the real culprit. Then who is the real culprit? Ketchy demanded, her eyes narrowing. If it's not you, Cunnel, then who? Who had the motive? Who had the opportunity? Cunnel opened his mouth to respond but stopped himself. For a moment he looked uncertain, almost guilty. But then he shook his head, his face hardening again. I don't know, he said flatly. And I don't care. Blame whoever you want. I'm done. The waitress who had spoken earlier stepped forward again, her hands trembling. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. Everyone turned to her, and she froze under their stares. She looked like she wanted to disappear. "What is it?" Chaik asked gently, trying not to scare her off. The waitress hesitated, her eyes darting nervously toward Kunnal. I think I might have seen something else." Kunnal's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, something else?" The waitress flinched but continued. "When I saw the man near the cake, the one with the sunglasses and hat, I thought he looked familiar, but I wasn't sure." "Familiar?" Ifeoma repeated, stepping closer. "How familiar? Like someone you've seen before?" The waitress nodded quickly. "Yes, but not here. I think I've seen him with him." She pointed a shaky finger toward Kunnal. Gasps rippled through the crowd. All eyes turned to Kunnal, who crossed his arms and glared at the waitress. "Me?" Kunnal said, his voice sharp. "You're saying this mystery man, who no one else has seen, was with me? That's convenient." "It's true," the waitress insisted, her voice rising. "I've seen you two together before. I don't know his name, but I've seen you talking to him." Kunnal laughed, the sound cold and bitter. "Oh, so now I'm guilty because you think you saw me with someone? That's weak, even for this circus. Then why are you so defensive?" Tola snapped. "If you're innocent, why not let us check?" "Check what?" Kunnal shot back. "There's nothing to check. This is all a waste of time." As the argument heated up, Emeka stepped forward, his calm voice cutting through the chaos. "There's one way to find out if Kunnal is involved or not. We can look for any signs that he interacted with the cake." "How do we do that?" Chaik asked. Emeka held up his testing kit. "If Kunnal touched the cake, or anything related to it, we might find traces of the poison on him." Kunnal's face darkened. "You've got to be kidding me. You want to test me now? What's next, a lie detector? If you have nothing to hide, there's no reason to refuse," Nkechi said, her voice steady. Kunnal hesitated, his jaw clenching. For a moment it looked like he might refuse, but then he shrugged, forcing a smirk. "Fine, test me. Do whatever you want. I've got nothing to hide." The guests watched in tense silence as Emeka prepared the test. He carefully swabbed Kunnal's hands, then ran the sample through a small portable device. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling longer than the last. Finally, the device beeped. Emeka's face hardened as he looked at the results. "Well?" Chaik asked, his voice tight. Emeka looked up, his expression grim. "There are traces of cyanide on his hands." The crowd erupted in gasps and shouts. Adaora clutched her chest, shaking her head in disbelief. "Kunnal, how could you?" Kunnal's smirk vanished. He took a step back, his eyes darting around the garden. That's not possible. I didn't touch the cake. This is a mistake." "It's not a mistake," Emeka said firmly. "The test doesn't lie. The cyanide came from the cake. How else would it get on your hands?" "I don't know," Kunnal shouted, his voice rising in panic. "Maybe someone set me up. Maybe—" "Enough!" Chaik's voice boomed, silencing the crowd. He stepped toward his brother, his eyes blazing. "Kunnal, stop lying. Just tell the truth. Did you do this?" Kunnal hesitated, his mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words. Finally, he sighed and lowered his head. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he said quietly. I just wanted to ruin the wedding, not hurt anyone. I swear." The confession hit like a thunderclap. Ifeoma staggered back, tears streaming down her face. Chaik's hands clenched into fists, his voice trembling with anger. "You wanted to ruin my wedding?" he said slowly, his voice low and dangerous. "Why, Kunnal? Why would you do this to me?" Kunnal looked up, his eyes filled with bitterness. "Because you took everything from me, Chaik. The business, the family's respect, everything. You think you're so perfect, but you're not. I just wanted to show everyone that—" "At what cost?" Tola shouted. "You could have killed people. Do you even understand what you've done?" "I didn't think it would go this far," Kunnal said weakly. I just wanted to make a point." "A point?" Nkechi repeated, her voice shaking with fury. You call this a point? You've disgraced your family and nearly destroyed lives. The crowd erupted into chaos again. Some shouting at Kunal, others trying to comfort Chaik and Ifeoma. Simba barked loudly, adding to the noise, but his job was done. The truth was out. Kunal stood silently in the middle of it all. His shoulders slumped, his face pale. For once, he had no words, no excuses. The weight of his actions hung heavy in the air, and there was no escaping it. The garden was a mess of voices, and every one of them carried anger, disbelief, or heartbreak. Kunal's confession hung in the air like a dark cloud, and the wedding that had once been so full of joy now felt like a funeral. Guests whispered to each other, some pointing at Kunal, others shaking their heads in disgust. Chaik stood still, staring at his older brother as if he were a stranger. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, his jaw tight with barely controlled anger. You wanted to ruin my wedding? Chaik's voice was low and trembling. My wedding, Kunal? What kind of person does that to their own brother? Kunal didn't look at him. He was staring at the ground, his shoulders slumped. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, Chaik. I just... Don't. Chaik's voice rose, cutting Kunal off. Don't tell me what you didn't mean. You put poison in the cake. Kunal. Poison. What if Ifeoma had eaten it? What if I had eaten it? Or Mama Nkechi? Or one of the guests? What then? Kunal looked up, his eyes wide with panic. I didn't think anyone would eat it. I thought someone would notice something was wrong before it got that far. I just wanted to ruin the moment, not hurt anyone. You thought. Tola's voice was sharp and unforgiving. You thought? Do you realize how stupid that sounds? You used poison. Kunal, poison doesn't just ruin moments. It kills people. Aotearoa, still clutching her chest, took a shaky step forward. You could have killed my daughter, she said, her voice trembling. My Ifeoma. You're a monster, Kunal. A monster. Kunal flinched as her words hit him, but he didn't try to defend himself. Instead, he looked toward their father, Chief Okonkwo, who had been silent through the entire ordeal. The old man stood apart from the crowd, his face blank, his eyes unreadable. Papa, Kunal said quietly, almost pleading. You know I didn't mean for this to happen. Please, say something. Chief Okonkwo didn't move. His deep voice finally broke the silence, each word carrying the weight of his disappointment. What do you want me to say, Kunal? That I'm proud of you? That I'm happy my son has brought shame to this family? Papa, You didn't think, Chief Okonkwo interrupted sharply. That's the only thing you didn't do, Kunal. You didn't think about your brother. You didn't think about his bride. You didn't think about this family. You only thought about yourself. Kunal's head dropped again, but his father wasn't finished. I worked my whole life to build this family's name, to make sure my children would never have to suffer the way I did. Chief Okonkwo continued, his voice growing louder. And now, in one day, you've destroyed it. Do you know what people will say about us? About you? About me? I didn't mean. Kunal tried again, but his father's glare silenced him. You didn't mean, Chief Okonkwo repeated bitterly. That's all you have to say? After everything you've done, all you can say is that you didn't mean it. Ifeoma, who had been quiet through most of the confrontation, suddenly spoke. Her voice was soft, but it carried a sharp edge that cut through the noise. Why, Kunal? I need to know why. Why would you do this to us? To Chaik? What did we ever do to you? Kunal hesitated, his lips pressing into a thin line. For a moment, it looked like he wasn't going to answer, but then he sighed and rubbed his hands over his face. I was angry, he admitted, his voice barely audible. Angry at Chaik, at how everything always goes his way. The business, the family's respect, even this wedding. He gets everything and I get nothing. Nothing? Chaik said, his voice rising again. You think you've had nothing, Kunal? Papa gave you the same opportunities he gave me. You're the one who walked away. You're the one who let your anger ruin everything for yourself. Kunal shook his head. It's not that simple. It is that simple. Tola snapped. You chose to be bitter. You chose to sabotage this wedding. Nobody forced you to do any of this, Cunnel. You did it to yourself. Crowd's murmurs grew louder as the argument continued. Some guests started leaving, shaking their heads in disgust. Others stayed, too shocked to move, as the family's dirty laundry was aired in front of everyone. Edaora turned to Chief Okonkwo, her voice sharp. You see what your son has done, Okonkwo? This is the man you raised. This is what you've brought into our lives. Okonkwo's face darkened. Do not speak to me as if your family is perfect, Edaora. My son may have failed me, but your daughter's family will not escape this shame either. Everyone here will remember this day as a disgrace. This is not my daughter's fault. Edaora shot back. Ifeoma didn't ask for any of this. She didn't ask to marry into a family with so much hatred. The word stung, but Ifeoma barely reacted. She was too focused on Cunnel, her eyes burning with tears and anger. You didn't just hurt Chike today, Cunnel. You hurt me. You hurt all of us. Cunnel met her gaze, but he couldn't hold it. He looked away, guilt written all over his face. Simba barked again, as if to remind everyone of his role in uncovering the truth. Chike knelt beside the dog, rubbing his head gently. You saved us, boy, he murmured. You saw what we couldn't. Ifeoma knelt beside him, her hand resting on Simba's back. If it weren't for Simba, I don't even want to think about what could have happened. The moment of quiet was short-lived. Chief Okonkwo stepped forward, his voice commanding attention once more. Cunnel, he said, you will leave this place immediately. You are no longer welcome here. Cunnel's eyes widened. Papa, no. Please. You heard me, Okonkwo said firmly. You've disgraced this family enough for one lifetime. I cannot call you my son after this. Papa, please, Cunnel begged, his voice cracking. I know I messed up. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm still your son. Please don't do this. Okonkwo didn't respond. He turned away, his face hard and unyielding. Tola stepped forward, her voice cold. Security, make sure he leaves. Cunnel looked around desperately, but no one came to his defense. The guests avoided his gaze, and his family stood silently, their faces full of hurt and disappointment. As the security guards approached, Cunnel gave one last look at Chike. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I really am. Chike didn't respond. He just watched as his brother was escorted away, the weight of betrayal heavy on his shoulders. When Cunnel was gone, the garden fell silent. The guests slowly began to disperse, leaving behind only the family and a few close friends. Ifeoma leaned against Chike, her tears soaking into his jacket. What do we do now? She whispered. Chike wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly. We move forward, he said softly. We don't let this ruin us. Mama Nkechi nodded, her voice steady. What happened today was terrible, but it doesn't have to define this family. We can rebuild. We can heal. Edaora, still visibly shaken, didn't argue. For once, she simply nodded in agreement. The once bustling garden was now quiet. Most of the guests had left, and the few who remained were close family and friends, lingering out of concern. The grand wedding, which had started as a celebration of love, was now a mess of shattered expectations and raw emotions. Ifeoma sat on one of the chairs near the empty aisle, her hands trembling in her lap. Her veil had been removed, and her carefully styled hair now hung loose around her face. She looked tired, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Chike knelt in front of her, holding her hands in his. His face was serious, his eyes filled with guilt and worry. Ifeoma, he began softly, I don't even know where to start. I'm so sorry. She shook her head, her voice barely audible. It's not your fault, Chike. You didn't do this. Cunnel did. But he's my brother, Chike said, his voice breaking. I should have known he was capable of something like this. I should have done more to stop him. How could you have known? She asked, looking at him with tired eyes. None of us saw this coming. Mama Nkechi and Edaora stood together, whispering. Edaora was still visibly upset, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Nkechi, though calmer, had a look of deep concern. What now? Edaora asked, her voice sharp but quiet. Do we just pretend like this didn't happen? No one is pretending, Nkechi replied gently. But the worst is over. Now we have to focus on healing. Healing? Edaora said bitterly. How do you heal from this? My daughter's wedding was ruined. The whole town will talk about this for years. They'll talk, yes, Nkechi admitted. But they'll also see that Ifeoma and Chaik didn't let this break them. That's what matters. Edaora didn't respond. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she looked away, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. Mika, who had been quietly packing up his testing kit, approached Chaik and Ifeoma. He hesitated before speaking, his voice careful. Chaik, Ifeoma, I know today didn't go as planned, but you still have each other. That's something no one can take away. Chaik nodded, though his expression was somber. Thanks, Emika. You're right. It's hard to feel that way right now. I understand, Emika said, glancing at Simba, who sat obediently at Chaik's feet. But if there's one bright spot in all of this, it's that dog. Simba saved you both. If he hadn't barked when he did, Ifeoma reached down to stroke Simba's head, her touch soft and grateful. He's a hero, she said, her voice trembling. We owe him everything. Simba wagged his tail slightly, leaning into her hand as if he understood her words. Chief Okonkwo, who had been standing silently by the garden's edge, finally stepped forward. His face was heavy with regret. His shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. Ifeoma, he said, his deep voice startling her. Chaik. They both looked up at him, their expressions wary but respectful. The tension between father and son was still palpable. I failed you both, Okonkwo said, his tone somber. As a father, as the head of this family, I let Kunnal's bitterness fester for too long. I should have seen the signs. I should have stopped him before it came to this. Papa, Chaik began, but Okonkwo held up a hand to stop him. No, let me finish, Okonkwo said firmly. Kunnal's actions were his own, but I take responsibility for my part in this. I should have been a better father to him and to you, Chaik. And for that, I am deeply sorry. Chaik looked at his father, his emotions a mix of anger and sadness. He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he simply nodded, a small gesture of acknowledgement. Mama Nkechi stepped forward, her voice breaking the silence. What happened today was a tragedy, but tragedies don't have to destroy us. They can make us stronger if we let them. Edaora scoffed softly. Stronger? My daughter's wedding was ruined. Nkechi, how is that supposed to make us stronger? It wasn't just about the wedding, Nkechi said gently. It was about love. And that love is still here. Ifeoma and Chaik are still together. That's what matters most. Edaora didn't respond immediately. She glanced at her daughter, who was now leaning into Chaik's arms, and her expression softened ever so slightly. Who had been standing nearby, spoke up. What are we going to do about Kunnal? The question hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Everyone seemed to avoid looking at each other, unsure of how to answer. He's gone, Chaik said finally, his voice steady. And I don't want to talk about him right now. Today isn't about Kunnal anymore. It's about Ifeoma and me. Nkechi nodded approvingly. That's the right attitude, Chaik. Focus on what matters most. As the sun began to set, the family slowly started to clean up the remnants of the wedding. The cake, once the centerpiece of the celebration, had been removed and discarded. The decorations, though still beautiful, now felt hollow and out of place. Chaik and Ifeoma sat together, watching as the last of the guests left. Simba lay at their feet, his eyes half closed but still alert. What happens next? Ifeoma asked softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. We move forward, Chaik said, echoing his earlier words. We rebuild, and we don't let this define us. Ifeoma nodded, though tears still glistened in her eyes. I just wanted today to be perfect. It wasn't perfect, Chaik admitted, taking her hand in his. But it was real, and we're still here, together. She smiled faintly, leaning her head against his shoulder. The night was calm, the chaos of the day finally settling into an eerie quiet. The garden, once full of laughter and celebration, was now almost empty. A few workers moved quietly, packing up chairs and decorations, while Chaik, Iphioma, and their closest family sat together under a small canopy. The air felt heavy, but there was a sense of relief that the worst was over. Iphioma leaned back in her chair, her hand resting on Simba's head. The dog sat loyally by her side, his eyes watching every movement, as if he was still on guard. She stroked his fur absent-mindedly, her thoughts far away. "I never thought my wedding day would end like this," she said softly, her voice breaking the silence. Chaik, sitting beside her, reached for her hand. "I know," he said gently. "I wanted it to be perfect for you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from all this." She turned to him, her eyes tired but warm. "It's not your fault, Chaik. None of this is your fault. And even though everything went wrong, I'm still happy I married you." Chaik smiled faintly, squeezing her hand. "I'm happy too, and I promise Ife, I'll do everything I can to make up for today. This is just the beginning for us." Chief Okonkwo sat silently, his face heavy with thought. Mama Nkechi, noticing his quietness, nudged him lightly. "Okonkwo, you've been quiet for hours. Say something," she urged. Okonkwo sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. "What do you want me to say, Nkechi? That I'm proud of what happened today? That I'm not ashamed of my family?" "No one's asking you to be proud of what Kunal did," Nkechi said firmly. "But this isn't the time for silence. Chaik and Iphioma need to know you're still standing with them." Okonkwo looked at his son, his gaze softening. "Chaik," he said slowly, "I've made many mistakes as a father. I didn't handle Kunal the way I should have. Maybe if I had, this wouldn't have happened. But today showed me something important." "What's that?" Chaik asked, his voice cautious. Okonkwo straightened in his chair, his voice steady. "It showed me that you're a stronger man than I ever gave you credit for. The way you handled yourself today, the way you stood by Iphioma, even with everything falling apart. I'm proud of you, my son." Chaik blinked, surprised by his father's words. "Thank you, Papa. That means a lot." Edaora, sitting nearby with her arms crossed, cleared her throat loudly. "Well, it's nice that you're proud of Chaik, Okonkwo, but let's not forget what your other son did to ruin my daughter's big day." Iphioma winced, glancing at her mother. "Mama, please, not now." "No, Iphioma," Edaora said, her voice rising slightly. "This was supposed to be the happiest day of your life, and it turned into a disaster because of this family's issues. Someone needs to say it." Kechi frowned. "Edaora, we've been through enough today. Can't we focus on moving forward instead of pointing fingers?" "I'm not pointing fingers," Edaora retorted. "I'm stating facts. If it weren't for Kunal, none of this would have happened. And what do you want us to do about it?" Kechi asked, her voice calm but firm. "Kunal is gone. The damage is done. All we can do now is support Iphioma and Chaik as they rebuild." Edaora opened her mouth to argue but stopped when she saw the pleading look in Iphioma's eyes. She let out a frustrated sigh and leaned back in her chair. "Fine, but don't think I'm forgetting any of this." Tola, standing nearby, decided to break the tension. "You know," she said, her tone light, "for all the chaos today, there's one thing we can all agree on." "What's that?" Iphioma asked, her curiosity piqued. Tola grinned and pointed at Simba. "This dog is the real MVP. If it weren't for Simba, we'd all be in the hospital right now, or worse." Everyone turned to look at Simba, who wagged his tail as if he understood he was being praised. Chaik chuckled softly, reaching down to scratch the dog's ears. "She's right," Chaik said. "Simba saved us. He deserves a medal or something. Or a steak," Emeka added with a laugh. "A big one." Iphioma smiled for the first time in hours, her hand still resting on Simba's head. "He's more than a hero. He's family. I don't know what we would have done without him." The group fell into a more comfortable silence, the tension easing slightly. The workers continued cleaning up around them, the sound of clinking glasses and rustling tablecloths filling the air. The garden, though still beautiful, felt different now, like a battlefield after the fight was over. Chaik glanced at Ifioma, his heart aching at the exhaustion on her face. Ife, he said softly, I know today wasn't what we planned, but I promise, I'll make it up to you. We'll have another celebration, just the two of us. Somewhere peaceful, far away from all this. Ifioma looked at him, her eyes filling with tears again. Not of sadness, but of gratitude. I don't need another celebration, Chaik. All I need is you. Chaik smiled, leaning in to kiss her forehead. You've got me. Always. Okonkwo cleared his throat, drawing their attention. Before the night ends, I want to say one last thing. Everyone turned to him, waiting for his words. We've been through a lot today, he began, his tone serious. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that family is everything. Even when we fail each other, even when we make mistakes, we must find a way to forgive and move forward. That's the only way we survive. Edoora snorted softly but didn't argue. Nkechi nodded in agreement, her expression thoughtful. Chaik and Ifioma exchanged a glance, their hands still intertwined. Despite everything, they felt a sense of hope, like the worst was behind them, and better days were ahead. As the night wore on, the family slowly began to leave the garden, their steps heavy but determined. Simba trotted alongside Chaik and Ifioma, his tail wagging, as if leading them into a brighter future. Ifioma, Chaik said as they reached the car, no matter what happens, I promise to protect you. I won't let anything like this happen again. She looked at him, her eyes shining with love. I know, Chaik, and I promise to stand by you, no matter what. They shared a quiet moment, their hearts full of unspoken words. Then, with Simba by their side, they climbed into the car, ready to start their new life together.
If you enjoyed this video, please share it so others can watch and learn from it too.